The menace known as Spider-Man is on the loose, along with some of his companions, and it's up to the Sinister Six to get past him and steal a bunch of loot without him noticing. In the board game Sinister Six, which we're reviewing today here on Roll for Crit, you will take on the role of one of the major villains who has been part of the Sinister Six. It's sort of a rotating roster.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of options. You've got the Lizard, Green Goblin, Rhino, Venom. I mean, look at all these guys. Doc Ock's in there, Sandman, Electro. Everybody that you could want to play as, and you are going on a series of heists around the city, and then you will ultimately go on one final heist as a group, and along the way you're going to try to avoid the Spider-Man cards, which will come out and try to ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
There are always 3 heists to go through, and then one final big heist that has a number of cards, which varies depending on number of players, goes up to 6 players appropriately. And at the start, everyone has their own set of action cards unique to their specific villain. You also get a special action card. You're going to have 2, and you get to choose which one that you want. Now, some of these are permanent abilities, so they stay in play as you go, and some of them are one-time abilities. You keep those, you decide when you want to use them. For instance, here Doc Ock can steal things from other players, and with this one, Doc Ock gets to look at some of the tokens during a heist beforehand.
That looking thing is important because this game isn't a cooperative game. You're trying to be the villain who gets away with the most loot. If you watch any kind of movie where the villains get together, you know in the end, their greed is what pulls them apart. The same can be said here. The game actually works. There's a bunch of tokens, and they have different values on them. And you actually have a nice little loot card here that shows the ranges, so you can see certain ones are more high risk, high reward. So when you take them, you can look at them and you can see maybe you got that better one or not. Or in Doc Ock's case, he can actually maybe look and know if that token is good or not.
Oh, I don't want that one. Don't care about that.
In order to get those loot tokens, though, you actually need to be able to break into the place. Now, you'll notice each location has a bunch of symbols on them. They're pretty much different things you may need, like distractions, strength, blueprints, what have you. And the way it works is everyone also gets a token like this in a different color. They have different numbers, and at the beginning of each of these heists, you will choose one to play. The one you choose will pretty much get your turn order for picking turn order. So it's not straight up turn order right away. It's like, so you may play this one early, but you may want to go last out of everyone. It's not just simply, I'm going first. If you play one of the tokens with these suitcase icons, that stands for Black Market. You will draw from the Black Market deck. These are sort of special effects, which we'll get to a little bit later. Now, once you've discovered turn order, all you need to do is you'll play one of your action cards, shown here with the symbols, and you will take your little hands and cover those symbols. Right now, order does not matter. You just cover the ones you want to cover. Then it'll go around in turn order. They'll do the same thing. And sometimes you may only cover one, sometimes more, but once all of them are covered, you will reveal the Spider-Man cards at the bottom. Now, Spider-Man will add some new twists. You also have to beat him as well. He'll also add loot, depending on. If you can't tell from the back of the card, there are 3 possible outcomes. Classic Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, and Miles Morales. Miles Morales tends to have 2 of the same symbols. Spider-Man is just a variety. And Gwen actually removes loot tokens from either the heist or other players, so you really want to be careful about her. Once you beat all of them, so you have to cover their symbols as well, starting with the first hand, and going down, you will get to take a loot token. So hypothetically, whether through Gwen or other ways, there might not be loot for everyone. So you do want to get those higher up position. Back to these Black Market cards. They have ways to cover up these symbols as well. They have 2 options, and you can possibly do both if available. First, if that symbol's showing, so let me remove that, you take a Black Market token, cover it, and you also get to take the loot right away. There is also another ability. It has fun text. Read it. You can do it. You can choose to do both or just one. Now, let's say you didn't match any of the symbols there. You can either discard a card to dodge, or you can be captured. Captured means no matter what, no matter where your hands are, you don't get any loot that turn. You don't lose what you have. You're out of the round. Once you go to the next round, however, those cards you played, you don't get back. So you may be forced to get captured there, or maybe you don't want to go all in here because you know there's 3 Spider-Men in that group. By the way, loot and Spider-Man are decided by the cards here.
The final heist works in roughly the same way as the others, but everyone's going to get all their basic action cards back. You will also lose any of your special actions. So if you had those special ongoing abilities, you don't get them for the last heist. You will reveal all the cards, but the twist this time is that you need to cover up those symbols in the order they're presented on the cards, including the 4 Spider-Man cards, for which there will always be 4 in the last one. You need to, in this case, if you want to have a good chance of surviving, really work with each other and cooperate and discuss a little bit, maybe who wants to go first, who wants to go last, that kind of thing, based on the cards in your hand, because in the final heist, if you're unable to complete the whole thing, then you are eliminated and everyone just loses the game.
That's right. Captured in the final heist, unlike the last one, isn't just not being able to get the loot. Your score is 0.
Yeah.
You don't even get. You're permanently captured. You're sent to the what's their super
The
prison?
raft.
The raft.
If that doesn't happen, you do manage to complete it, then everyone reveals their loot tokens, counts up the total number of points, and whoever has the most is the winner.
Now, we should mention that last one. Some people may be captured and other people not. Those other people are the only ones who get the score. It's not a one-for-all in that thing. So there's a bit of a requirement of cooperation from everyone.
Yeah, in that sense, it does become more semi-cooperative, that at least ideally it does. Depending on your group, they may not get along, just like the real Sinister Six. So definitely the tokens themselves and the random scores on them is a big part of this, because sometimes you have to decide. You may get a choice sometimes of which loot token that you want to go for, and you're based on these numbers here. Some of them are more high risk, high reward. Some of them are kind of more middle ground. They're a decent number, but there's no really great numbers. And any of these abilities, like the Doc Ock one, anything that lets you maybe get a peek at those, or maybe steal other people's, or move them around. That's really the name of the game.
Right. That's where a lot of the fun can be had in this game. For example, Jonathan did play Doc Ock in our first game, and he had the ability that he gets to look at tech tokens.
Right.
So he actually was successfully bluffed someone by looking at a tech token and taking the top slot, showing as if he wanted to make sure he got first pick at loot.
Right.
Someone then played their special to swap with him, and then took the tech card, which was a 1.
Yeah, so there are little things like that. Depending on the powers, some of those mind games may come into play more. Also, with these black market cards, there is some
shenanigans.
Yeah, some kind of take that stuff. Like I said, you're stealing from people. Maybe you block them. Maybe you can swap positions with someone else on the field, which can be nice. So even if you don't have the cards that you need, you have some little ways to play some tricks and things.
The weird thing, though, is as we said, this final round, it almost, because the way it works is that you're all eliminated. You're not all, but you are permanently eliminated if you're unable to do it, and you have to go in perfect order. You can't do a TNT here and running guy there.
Right.
It requires everyone to really talk and cooperate, which feels like the game's spirit changes a little bit.
Yeah, definitely the first time we were like, wait, how do we do this? And we realized, we need to communicate, because otherwise this is just so impossible.
And it ended up with one person having to, he got captured and lost. And I remember thinking, we did finish it. We were able to make it through with our 6-man. But if I was we're halfway at the card, let's say, and I was looking at I'm going to get captured, so I'm out. Why don't I just tank it?
Right. Which maybe you could argue is in the spirit of the theme, but mechanically it's maybe not that satisfying.
Right. And that's why I thought the first 3 that's where a lot of fun is, because there is plenty of I feel like the backstabbing didn't permanently kick someone out.
Right.
And so that was a little fun to play mind games with each other, but you're we're working together.
Yeah, I think that's part of the mindset, I guess, you got to have going into this. Also, at that point, it is the last round, so there's not too much. There's no player elimination, but there could be a couple rounds where you're I used all the cards, and there's nothing I can do. Which
you only have in essence 4 cards. You might have more from the black market. They will carry over, but that won't be too helpful. And it is nice that the tokens are hidden. I'm always more of a fan when scores are hidden, because it's a little bit harder to be I'm out of the game. You could have 3 techs, but they could all be 1s.
Right, yeah.
Instead of 10s.
It's true. You don't exactly know who's winning and stuff. I like the art style of the game. I think is a nice kind of its own thing. It's not really, it's kind of it's inspired by 60s comic art a little bit, but more modernized in some respects. And these little hands are a nice, simple touch that, you get the idea across. You're this is Doc Ock. It's not too elaborate, but it's nice. It's nice to look at.
I'm also a big fan of the choosing at the beginning, because at first first I was like, oh, I really wish there's a big lizard player board. But then when playing the game, you're like, okay, or, thinking like, it's a one-time, but this one time could really turn the game around for me. Like one time I was playing as the hunter, I'm completely Craven, thank you. And his one time was to take out 2 villain hands because he's a sniper, and then put your hands there. So I'm like, oh, I can just wait. If there's this one had a lot of loot because there are a lot of Spider-Men, and then just boom, just take those slots.
Yeah, it's nice. They add a little something extra to it. I don't think that it's not the most thematic heavy game. It's the Doc Ock powers aren't really like specific to Doc Ock, but they tried a little bit. And they, at least I think each character does have, like you said, unique abilities. So it does feel different playing as one versus the other. Here are our crits and misses for Sinister Six, starting with our Sinister crits. There's an ongoing feeling of suspense and being a little bit in the dark throughout the game, thanks to the tokens for points that are face down and player powers that may trigger at different times, allowing for some fun mind games between players.
Throw in the fact that there isn't just one kind of token, but 4, I think it's hard to see who's in first, and still allows for a lot of back and forth between players.
In those first 3 rounds of the game, there's a thematically appropriate balance players have to strike between going for the most points that they can, satisfying their own greed, and working together with others.
You only have so many action cards. If you use all your action cards in the first few rounds, you may have nothing in the third one. Flip! Here come the misses. I understand why they wanted to make the final heist difficult and also add that player elimination to make it a bit more stressful. But I found that final round lacking because it felt like you had to give up any sort of competitive spirit in order for anyone to be able to make it to the end.
The tone of the game does shift dramatically in that last round, which can be jarring, and semi-co-op games are already sometimes not a hit for everybody. And depending on the player count for the game, the balance of how hard that final round is may change as well.
When you deal with these Marvel superheroes, it's a little hard if you have a game about that hero, but it's not playing as them. I think Spider-Man is one of the few ones, maybe outside of, I think, Batman, who has a decent villain gallery that you can play as the villains and everyone would enjoy that. And I think, for the most part, it seems we're in agreement. The first 3 rounds, it does it fantastically well.
Yeah. And I don't even think that, we griped a little bit about that last round, but for me, it's not enough to really drag the game down. It's a little bit off, and there's some issues with it, but I feel like it's fairly consistent throughout still, and I think if you're ready for that going in, it meshes together pretty well.
Right. I guess for me, I was just a little disappointed because I think the first few rounds did it so much very well, and I think maybe, I don't know whether if it did a refresh and somehow instead of maybe player elimination, but maybe multiple heist targets, something like that, because like I said, this is more playing with the people you play with, but hypothetically someone could, if they don't feel like they have a shot at winning, just tank it, which would hurt everyone and make it so everyone loses.
Yeah, it's hard because you want to make the final round something big and special, but yeah, how do you do that within the framework of it? But yeah, overall, I liked this game. I thought it was fun.
This is the big Spider-Man fan here.
It's true. So like I said, it's not the most super thematic game. I don't think as a Spider-Man fan you're like, wow, it's like I'm putting on Green Goblin's gloves or whatever. But the theme is still fun. It's enough. Could it be any? Could you just be bank robbers of any kind and not in the Spider-Man universe? Yeah, but that's fine. It's still decent enough. And I like the minute-to-minute gameplay of it. I think it's a decent, more or less on the more casual side of games, but there's enough going on to keep your interest piqued. It reminded me of another game. I don't remember if you played it, but there's a Van Ryder game called The Big Score, which is also about bank heists and stuff. And this, to me, felt like kind of a simplified aspect of that, condensed into one game. But
I will say, it's a small thing, but they include more than 6 characters.
Yeah.
Which I think they didn't need to. I feel like if they only had 6 villains, neither of us would have probably batted an eye. Mostly because the Sinister Six, I think, has rotated its cast so much. There's maybe outside of maybe Doc Ock and Green Goblin, we wouldn't have cared who made him did not make the cut.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So it is very nice that they add that little extra, and they are slightly different with their special abilities. I think all Doc Ocks revolve around tech, but like you said, it isn't that really deep thematic that I think you may have seen in maybe heavier games. But for a light game with Spider-Man, I think it gets the job done.
Yeah, the theme is more or less appropriate, and I think it's fun. So maybe don't, like web swing out to pick it up, but take the subway if you're in town and you see it. And I don't think you'll have too bad a time with it. It's called Sinister Six, and we'd like to hear from you. Maybe you've had a chance to play it as well. Which characters do you like to play as? What do you think about that final round? How does it work with your play group versus ours?
Maybe, is there a Sinister Six member that was not included, you feel that was ripped off and cut off and should be included somehow?
Yeah, justice for Shocker.
Yeah.
And Chameleon. I don't know. Let us know in the comments. Talk to us. Thank you for watching. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Will.
This has been a Roll for Crit review.
Hey, go ahead, like and subscribe, and support our Patreon for even more board game content.
Support us now to hear the audio expansion, where you can hear all the other nerdy things we've been up to.